Today, we're jumping into the first major section of the Qur'an. And you have to know, this isn't just a random collection of verses. It's actually this beautiful, coherent story. A journey that kicks off with one single profound request, and then unfolds into a complete map for the human search for a path.
Everything, and I mean everything, starts right here, with this one simple but incredibly powerful prayer from the Quran's opening chapter. You can almost think of it as the inciting incident for the entire narrative. A person stands before God and makes the most fundamental request you can make: show me the way. In a lot of ways, the rest of the Quran is the answer to this prayer.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We start with the Quran's very first chapter, Al-Fatiha, which means the opening. And even though it's just 7 short verses, it lays the entire groundwork for our relationship with God and for the whole journey we're about to take.
What's so amazing about this chapter is that it gives us a perfect model for how to even talk to God. See, it's not just about asking for stuff. It starts with praise, with acknowledging who He is. Then it moves to this core pledge, and only after building that relationship does it get to the ultimate request, guidance. It's basically a perfect summary of faith packed into just a few lines. All right, so the prayer for guidance has been made. What happens next? Well, the text doesn't waste any time. It immediately responds by rolling out this incredible spiritual map. It defines the whole landscape by describing the 3 basic ways people react when guidance actually shows up. And you have to understand, these aren't just some old historical groups. They're timeless archetypes of how we all are. The text is basically inviting us to look at this map and figure out where we might fit. So let's take a look at the characteristics that define each group. So you can see the distinctions are crystal clear. On one side, you have the believers. They're defined by what they believe inside and what they do outside. On the other end, the disbelievers, who are basically sealed off from the message. But it's this third group, the hypocrites, that gets the most attention here. You know, the ones who look the part, but on the inside, they're full of doubt and actually causing problems. And to really hammer the point home, the text uses this powerful, vivid imagery. I mean, this parable of the fire is just stunning. It paints this picture of someone who gets just close enough to the truth to see a flicker of light. But because they're not sincere, that light is snatched away, and they're left in an even deeper darkness than before, totally lost.
Now you might be asking, okay, but why do we need this guidance and this map in the first place? To answer that, the narrative hits the rewind button and takes us all the way back to the very beginning, to the origin story of humanity itself.
This story just frames the human condition so perfectly. It's not about being born with some permanent stain. It's about potential, but also about being prone to making mistakes. We have this incredible capacity to learn, but we're also vulnerable. So the key takeaway is that messing up isn't the end of the story. Turning back to God is. Our whole journey on earth starts with a mistake, but it also starts with forgiveness and the promise of guidance.
So, after we get the prayer, the map of humanity, and our origin story, the text then zooms into a really detailed historical case study. It wants to show us how these ideas play out in the real world. And the biggest chunk of this first juz is dedicated to the story of the children of Israel, or Bani Israel.
First, the story sets the stage by just listing the incredible, undeniable blessings God gave this community. And we're not talking about subtle hints here. This was direct, miraculous stuff, from being saved from a genocidal tyrant to literally having food fall from the sky. But then, you see the other side of the coin. This history of amazing blessings is contrasted with a history of forgetting them. The text shows how, even after seeing all these clear signs, the community broke their promises again and again. This isn't just a list of mistakes, it's a powerful lesson in human nature and what happens when guidance is taken for granted.
And this really gets to the heart of it all. It's this constant tension. On one side, you have God's call, remember what I gave you, just fulfill your side of the deal. And on the other, you have the human tendency for our hearts to just harden, to the point where they're described as being like stones. It's a really powerful lesson for anyone who comes after.
So after that long, intense history lesson, the narrative does something brilliant. It doesn't just end there. It zooms out, way out, and brings it all back to a universal, foundational figure who came before all these specific communities: Abraham. Abraham's story is really presented as the climax of this whole section. He is the ultimate role model of submission. He passes every single test God gives him. He builds a physical center for pure worship, and then he prays for the future. He represents the ideal that all this guidance is pointing us back towards. And this leads us to this super important concept, Millet Ibrahim, or the Path of Abraham. This is presented as the original, unfiltered source code of faith. The point is that this guidance isn't about some new religion. It's a call to return to the pure, simple submission to the one God that Abraham perfectly embodied.
So, let's just pull it all together. The first juz is an absolute masterclass in storytelling. It takes us from a deeply personal prayer for a path to a map of human psychology, into our own origin story, through a tough history lesson, and finally, it points us toward a universal ideal that we can all strive for.
And that brings us right back to where we started, to the whole point of this section. It begins with our prayer, and everything that follows is the detailed, complex, beautiful answer. It lays out the paths of those who got it right and those who stumbled. And it leaves us with the final, personal question that just echoes through time. The map is in your hands. The choice of direction, well, that's up to us.